He's held management roles at some of travel's biggest brands, from Disneyland to Accor, and is now responsible for Booking.com's largest regional market. Please welcome Peter Verhoeven, Managing Director of Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Welcome to a tropical Amsterdam. I walked down from our office 1.5 kilometers here to get my clicks of the day. It's hotter than I thought. 28 degrees. I hope you have time to enjoy the city tonight, because high temperatures in Amsterdam around this time of year are not so usual. So the temperature gets up, dancing is great. So I know a couple of places to go to tonight. But before we go there, let's go into some content and talk a little bit about Booking.com. I wanted to take you in 15 minutes a little bit about where we're standing now. Our mission is to empower people to experience the world. That's a large mission. If you look at it, it's much more elaborate than just booking and looking for stays. We've really elaborated on that, and we think we can add value to the total travel experience, from basically thinking of a trip to also in-trip stays, adding value. And I'll try to show you a little bit of some examples on that later on. How do we do that? And I thought that introduction was really good from Simon, talking about what is really key in a company like ours. It's people. It's people. And if I look at how many people we are now versus when I joined in 2014, we went from 8,000 people to 15,000 people in 3 years. So how do you onboard and how do you get the people to help you use that collective intelligence smartly to grow your company, to scale your company, to motivate them, to engage them, is what we're working on day and night. Here in Amsterdam, we have now 7 offices with 3,500 people. But of course, the usual offices are much smaller. If you go to Florence, you'll have 25 people. Small offices, 199 all over the world, serving our partners over there. So working together with those offices remotely, with the big innovations hub centrally, and how do you attract talent is really what will determine how you get innovation done on this, on customer-centric value creation. Because if there's one thing that we've learned over the years, that this is really everything that is centered in the middle, and stands in the middle of innovation, keeping the center around the customer at all innovation paces. And how does that work? Does it work easily? Is everybody just talking about innovation day and night? No, there's a lot of work being done. And I do ask you, if you have time, and I really think it's worth your time maybe, if you go to YouTube and you look for Stuart Frisbee's presentation that he did recently in a conference on what the culture of innovation is and how you thrive on innovation. Because even if you're in a different company, if you're in a different sector, if you're in a different frame, you might want to think about how you use collective intelligence of all those rich people that come to you from all nationalities, backgrounds, and different expertise fields, how you can make them work on customer-centric innovation. And that is, in our case, purely data-driven. It's hypothesis, it's an idea, that's not enough. It's an hypothesis. Hypotheses are tested through data. Data will tell us where the product will evolve to. We'll experiment on it. Hopefully we'll fail fast, because most experiments fail. So how do you build an organization where failure is okay? How do you build an organization where data-driven decision-making is really top of the bill, and not being decided by hierarchy first, but by the people doing innovation? And how do you make sure that these autonomous teams that work on innovation feel the freedom and the liberty to innovate? So, in our culture, if it can be tested, we test it, and that's sometimes nerve-wracking, because you can never say as an executive and say, I think this is the truth, or I think that's the truth. It's going to be, if you're lucky, you make it to the table of an hypothesis. If you have some reliable data that give you credit to the teams, we have 75 teams working on front-end innovation every day, and they might take your hypothesis if they think there's something in it and test it. And that's how we work along the line, also for customers, innovation, front-end, but also for partner innovation, and also on the marketing platforms. So, in types of conventions like this, usually you think then, okay, now we're going to hear the next big thing in Booking.com, right? But how can I say that if I said this before, right? Sorry. Back, can I go back one? Yeah. Back. Yeah. So how can I predict the future and say what we're going to do from here in 5 years with a roadmap if I believe in testing culture, if I believe in autonomous teams deciding themselves on where the product is going to evolve to? If I believe that, how can I determine what the roadmap of our company is going to be? It's impossible. So the first thing that you'll see if you look at Stuart Frisbee's YouTube video, Booking.com, costs you 25 minutes. It's a great learning on A/B and how A/B testing is not something you do, but it's a culture. And if you look to it, one of the first things he'll say, embrace chaos, because if you are in an organization where innovation can only be driven in this way, you have to come to terms with chaos. Secondly, throw away your roadmap. Throw away thinking about roadmaps and 5-year plans, because the tests will determine where the product takes you. The customers will determine which test is successful, and that test is the best indicator of what customers want and will define your next steps. So only the velocity, the speed of experimentation, the number of experiments you do are a key indicator to how fast you innovate and where you innovate on. That also means something if you're in an executive position in Booking.com, right? You have to understand that your vision or your opinion is worth very little. And specifically, if you try to push down an opinion as an hypothesis, many people will be looking at you and think, yeah, well, I have the same data as you. Why should you decide over me? So you have to really think about this. And I think it's interesting because it's a real significant change that I've seen from my previous background, where you come from now, where I came from the industry, and where I stand now. This is something that's really unique, and it has given us this huge growth in the last 21 years. So what does the future hold? We can talk about macro, because that's data, right, that we can take from others. The future holds that we're in the right business, and I think everybody in this room, and we just heard it, is very happy about the prospects of the travel industry. And we are in a great business, and as long as national borders keep open, as long as we can see travel being good, we know there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be countries that are less successful one year than another, but travel itself moves, and it's growing. And I think we're in a very successful business, and also, of course, looking at the potential of Asia-Pacific there. Online travel growth trend. It would have been, of course, very politically correct to take a Phocuswright statistic here, right? I didn't. I took a Euromonitor, sorry. Yeah, otherwise it looks too cooked, right? But we all agree that online travel is big, and when just Simon said it's 50%. If you take all segments confounded, it's big, and some geographies bigger. But if you look at accommodation specifically worldwide, this is the picture. And even in Europe, we see that online, so website direct bookings or indirect bookings over an engine are very small in percentage, maybe 35, maybe 40%. That means there's still in that segmentation shift, in our opinion, large growth potential. So we're in a good market. Penetration online can still go up, in our opinion, and customer expectations are changing. And this we know from research, from external research, but we also know it from learning from our own experiments. An experiment we do 1,000 consecutively at the moment in all our platforms. So when you talk about real reviews power, we have 180 million today, and we see that user-generated content is and will remain key. The credibility of that is very important. If you look at multi-screen interactions, I can talk to you about it later. We know that when we talk about mobile, the facility, the easiness to travel between screens is hugely important. And if we talked 1 year ago when I was in Dublin about 1 on 3 bookings being booked through mobile already on our platforms, now it's 2 out of 5, 40%. Bookings, not just looking, really booking. So we see that mobile is hugely growing and fastly growing. And technology in that field plays a big role. What does it mean for the industry? I think it means that personalization is going to go way up. And you know it already. If you look at your own profile, people know where you've traveled before. We can see that also. Others can do that too. You can see where you're geolocalized. You can give yourself, you can open yourself up to options that will be proposed to you in a much faster and a much more precise way. And we'll talk about that in marketing in a little bit too. Choice matters. Every time we try to restrict on front end anything on choice on customers, it never works. So if you try to pre-fill filters on accommodation type, for example, driving customers to a pre-filtered type of accommodation types. It hasn't worked so far. Choice is hugely important, and that's why we also went from 500,000 properties when I joined in 2014. Now we're at 1.2 million properties. An interesting statistic on that is if you look now at the growth of our business, we are now booking 1.4 million room nights every 24 hours. So the breadth of choice, the possibility to have choice and to give it to consumers and to make it easily usable and bookable is key. Technology disruptions, of course, there's many of them. Social marketing channels, maybe experimental, but interesting to learn from. If you look at programmatic marketing, the ability to segment in a smarter way your customer base, to identify what type of ad would be the most appropriate to that person at that moment, is not only happening in our company, but it's happening everywhere. Anybody read about the elections in the States, the Brexit? There's a lot of profiling that goes on from customers knowing not what type of demographics they are, but what kind of character they have. Are they open, are they closed, are they introvert, are they extrovert? Programmatic marketing will take a new development in the next years. Closer to us, mobile payments. I think mobile payments in Africa, we talked about it, I talked about it to the teams in Africa the day before yesterday. Huge platforms of mobile payments. Mobile is the only thing in Africa, by the way, is the only access to the internet, and everything goes on mobile phone now. Think about also WeChat, how that is a gateway not only to communication, but it's a gateway to commerce. It's a gateway to payments. Messaging platforms, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but how can you interact during the entire experience of travel constantly with your guest? How can you be relevant to that customer? And how can you ensure you're top of mind and relevant to his ideas? And of course, all of this facilitated by quicker programmation, quicker learning. And sometimes when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's presented very complex, and it is, of course, but it's nothing more than the ability of a program to detect patterns automatically rather than telling it what type of pattern to detect. And that technology is going very, very fast, and I'll show you some examples of what we use it for. So this is the world, right? Now in 2020. 2020 is in 3 years. It's nothing. It's tomorrow. These are the number of connected people now. These are the number of connected people tomorrow. The number of devices that are connected to them. And the search component. We talked about in the introduction, the ability to be relevant in voice search. How are you going to do it? Are you going to be on that technology forefront, and can you offer it? And of course, there's so many things that happen in there. Translation is so important in there, taking friction out of travel. There's huge opportunities in there, helped by tech, by technology. Messaging we do ourselves. We start small, we're starting to get bigger. Between guests, customers and ourselves, between customers and partners, partners engaging directly with guests on that, and we see there's huge appetite for that, for many reasons. Of course, when a customer starts interacting with a partner, we know there's a real appetite to come. There's a real chance of him not canceling, but really showing up at the property. There's a lot of value that can be added through that communication, and how you do that in translation from Chinese Mandarin to German and to French is, of course, core in technology and what we're investing in. The booking assistant is another, I think, really funny way. Today we have an expression in our company, it's called training the bot. What are you doing? Training the bot. You look around, where's the bot? Basically what's happening now is people are really working on giving customer an interface connectivity on easy questions. The bot will be able to detect the typology of questions from the pattern and will be able to reply to you directly through a chat functionality. It's still human-assisted, but it's going to take a huge leap in the coming years. And the ability to do that, of course, also determines the ability how you scale and how you keep a simple business model scalable in the future. So here's some examples of visuals on there. Booking experience, something else we venture in. If we talk about empowering people to experience the world, you talk about also experience in stay. And what is the exact moment that you can offer that? A year ago, we started testing this, and in very humble, small steps. We said in the first things, we need to detect the hypothesis, if it holds, that there is appetite, that the market gives a signal that there's a real credibility for Booking.com to offer experience to customers. Because if we think we can do it, doesn't mean the customer thinks it. So we started small, but now we're in London, Paris, Dubai, Rome, and we're scaling out that experience because we've tested it we've really been able to measure the traction we can get in that, and we did some great tests in Amsterdam, which we will never forget because it was really busy, to see how customers react to us offering that. Do they think we're credible? Yes, they do. They want it. At what moment during their planning or in journey are they looking for that? And can they seamlessly go into that attraction or that experience during their stay? Huge new way of venturing into something we haven't done before. So when we talk about marketing, and this is maybe more on the partner side, if you talk about marketing to your customers, right? So put yourself in an accommodation. You need technology, you need partners, and there is no averages. And sometimes I think conferences like this or others, they have a tendency to extrapolate. You should do distribution this way. You should do this and that. Look at 1.2 million partners on our platform, 30 accommodation types, and I've listed them here. You see a teepee, you see an igloo, you see a bungalow resort, you see many different types of resorts, many different types of owners. So for us to sit here and decide what is the best distribution strategy is not scalable. The entrepreneur will decide. He will test, he will experiment, he will work with technology partners, he will give availability or room sales capabilities to the partners he trusts in technology that have either delivered to him in the past or he thinks are prone to deliver to him at the right ROI. That's how we look at the business we do too when we generate demand. So there is no averages, or be very careful of averages. Look at the spread of distribution. Look at the typology of your partners, because one size certainly does not fit all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Please take your seat, and we'll bring up our talkbackers. The CEO of Rome to Rio, Rod Cuthbert. Welcome, Rod. And Managing Director of Landell Green Parks of Wyndham Vacation Rentals, Thomas Erkins.
Hello.
Rod, you have the honors.
So I was interested to see you mention attractions. That's an interesting trial that you ran, but the world's a big place. Are you going to do it all yourself like Expedia, or it took them a long time to build their attractions business?
Yeah, so we're now testing, we're now rolled out in London, Paris, Rome, Dubai, and I think one more. Amsterdam, probably, yeah. So we're taking small steps. Depends that per destination, the landscape is different. Of course, there are experiences that are easily willing to work with you because they see the benefit of, for example, having volumes come through different time slots. So it really depends on the aggregation in the geography, if there's one aggregator that works. But what we want to work a lot with partners that are willing to test. Sometimes you can get them in a bundled way, sometimes you can't. We just see as we go in small incremental steps.
Yeah, I think there's probably still in the audience today a couple of really interesting tours and attractions business that you guys could just buy. You love buying things, right?
Well, actually, if you look at Booking.com, we have bought some companies, but not that many. But we do look, of course, at opportunities. If we think we can make leap years in progress, we assess it. So, for example, we bought Price Match 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I think now, that brought us rate intelligence, rate manager, tools for partners to be smarter about their distribution strategy. So sometimes we do it, but historically we've done a lot of stuff ourselves also.
Okay. Another question, Peter, for you. What I see happening in Booking.com, that you're moving away from hotels to vacation rentals, or adding vacation rentals to your space, like we're doing with our parks. Simon already talked about the European Union and the huge difference between Europe and US, and also between differences in European countries. What is your view on how Europe will develop when it comes to vacation rental, and what your role is? Also given the fact that the European Union, as Simon already mentioned, will have a huge impact, or could have a huge impact in this space.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about the European impact. I know that there is an appetite for, we can attract customers in a credible way to explore vacation rentals. And that's what was, of course, the first thing. Are you going to go just in one segment, or are you going to broaden your accommodation types? And we did it. And we tested different things, right? We first started with a separate portal. Then we integrated everything because we noticed that the mere fact of having choice to customers on our platform was much more relevant. So we see it as an appetite. We see it as a large traction. I think we have 25 million rooms today, of which, there's 1.2 million properties, 600,000 already vacation apartments, type of rentals we call booking home sometimes. So there's a lot of appetite for it. The European Union, I'm not quite sure I got that point.
Well, the point could be is that there's different regulations in the country. You see, let's say, the power of you in distribution, Google as well. So you see some sort of setback, like we've seen in pricing and price parity, where the European Union comes with different measures, basically trying to limit your
I
growth
think
potential.
to be very honest, we had this investigation by competition authorities on the narrow MFN, the pricing parity discussion. And I think the conclusion was that that's put to bed by 10 of those authorities. And but at the same time, there's still things going on regulation. If it's in non-hotel accommodation, if it's about apartments, if it's in the city of Amsterdam, if it's in London, there's a lot of regulations will change. I think, you know, embrace chaos. We're in a space where we innovate, where we operate around the core of innovation for customers, and we will adapt. So, for example, if you look at the city of Barcelona, there was a big appetite to regulate apartment rentals, for example. And you know, we were one of the first ones to implement that because the city wanted to ensure that tourism was only happening in certain spaces under certain conditions. So we adapt, and you know, we know we are big in some segments. We need to be responsible. We also know in the total space of travel, we're, you know, simply a single-digit figure in there. So we're quite reassured that there's a lot of space to innovate.
Yeah. Good.
Just thinking about that, would it be true that in a particular metropolitan area where there is pending legislation to essentially suppress the likes of Airbnb, that you might in fact be on the side of the suppression because you can win on the other side with the hotels?
Well, I mean, what you try to get is a level play field. And for example, if a city decides to have certain regulations for non-hotel accommodation rentals, you just want to apply it, and you want to make sure that everybody has a, you know, an equal level playing field on that. So, you know, if Airbnb, I mean, the truth is there is demand for this type of housing, right? So cities will follow with the regulations, and hopefully it's very coherent, and hopefully Europe will help us in there, because it wouldn't it be great if there would be some coherent structure of regulation around things. But there is an appetite for non-hotel accommodation, and you know, you can give it more space, or you can give it less space. You can regulate it more, or you can regulate it less, but disappearing it will not. And you see that also here in the city of Amsterdam. There's some debates about it, but people understand that to a certain extent it's okay, and then in certain areas maybe less because they're very close to the center, so there's going to be regulation. You just have to adapt to that. And Airbnb has that too. Of course, you know, I cannot talk for them. We have hotels and apartments. We have the, you know, the whole wide set of offerings, and but you know, we want to offer to customers what they want too, and I think our competition does too.
You talked about personalization, and I think we all understand that personalization is going to be quite key in going forward in travel and making the right offer, which is spot on. What I quite often hear from Booking, and what I sometimes experience myself, that I quite often get the email or the display from the holiday which I took 2 months ago. How do you move away from that situation towards a situation where you are looking forward to see what my next holiday is going to look like?
Well, first of all, we made an impression on you, right?
You did. You did.
So some branding went down there.
Yeah.
No, I think, yeah, of course, there's constant learning. I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of email marketing that you can involve, and we do a lot of it, of course, and it's very, very experimented on also, and we improve small steps. But I think, you know, if I know already now log in to my profile, I know that I've stayed in a certain type of accommodation. I can give my budget already, or my type of, you know, type of accommodation I like, and I can get proposals based on that, including what I've stayed in the previous trip. So that, you know, you can look at that two ways. I love it because it takes into account my feeling of what I like. And some people say, well, no, I want to see the whole lot. Well, then go without any cookies and log in, and you'll see. But I think customers can go faster to what they want. You take friction away if you can pre-sense in a good way what they're looking for. And if you can help them go faster in that whole funnel.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Google. You guys spend, I think it's about $1 bajillion a year with them on advertising. You've made them very rich. And a few years ago, if I did a search on, say, Paris hotels, I would see Booking.com ads, and I would see SEO, organic results from Booking.com at the top of the page. And you worked hard over many years to do that, and that drove your business. And now Google have inserted their own product in there, the Hotel Finder, and pushed your stuff and TripAdvisor's and a lot of other people down below the fold. Does that annoy you just a little bit? You can probably admit to being a little bit annoyed without getting in trouble from your PR people.
No, I think to be honest, to innovate on this screen is the biggest change, right?
It's still 50% or 45% on the other screen.
But the big thing is, but if you see where the trend is going, it's this screen. It needs to happen in this screen. So forget about their own ads or whatever, or the space. Of course, everybody looks at the size, the digits, and how much. But if you really look at it, who's going to be credible in this space is going to be hugely important. And I think to be visible there, yeah, there is of course a big competition out there, because visibility to a customer costs something, goes at a cost. Is free visibility or organic results still important? Yes, it is. Is there less space for that on this? Yes, there is. No doubt. And that makes it more expensive for all of us, by the way, all of us in the industry. But that's the way the model works. And we also, as a customer, see the huge benefits of it, right?
Peter, we have a question from the audience.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Sarah, journalist for Hospitality Insight in Germany. I have a quick question. I would like to actually jump on Thomas' question about EU regulations and the fact that regulations from country to countries are completely different. And recently in France, Le Maire laws regarding digital and numeric environment has been passed, and rentals like Airbnb or even rentals on Booking.com will have to be registered officially, and only registered apartments and rentals could be listed. What is your comment on that? And do you intend to comply? Do you intend to fight against it? Because it's going to downsize your portfolio, I guess, quite a lot. Many French will not register officially because they simply could not. They are not owners of the apartments.
Yeah, I think, to be very honest, we're a law-abiding company, and we have been always. The truth is, you of course want it to be enforced in all platforms. So I think, and that's the big debate you always have. If you're the good citizen and then the whole industry does anything else and nothing happens, then you have a problem. But I think, in the first, we always try to abide by local laws. And I give you the example of Barcelona, but it's happening in different cities. So if there's legislation that requires a property to have a number or a registration for tax purposes, for all the collection purposes that cities might have, for regulation issues, for control issues, and that's the law, and we abide by it. And I think in Barcelona we were the first to do it. So that's our stance on that. Does that answer your question? Thanks.
Have another question from the audience?
Hi, Peter. My name is Danilo from Amadeus. I was looking at Facebook Messenger, search for Booking.com, was saying there typically responds within a few hours. Typed in hello, got no response back. You mentioned that you guys are working on some sort of chatbot functionality, messaging. You mentioned the importance of that for scalability. Could you share a little bit more what you're working on and when you plan to launch?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, so we, for example, if you're now on a Genius user, you can, for example, also connect with Facebook Messenger and start communicating there. You typing hello, I'm not sure the bot recognizes hello as a real relevant request, I'm not sure. It's not in all languages, it's not on, we're testing very small scale. So the whole AI is a big learning thing. We have customer support on Facebook messengers, or we have ways to support our customers, but it's not all artificial intelligence, not at all. We are at the early stages of seeing how that can scale. And that means in English language, on some customer bases, we're testing that. So it's not full on. Does that answer your question? Thanks.
One more question, and we'll go back to the talkbackers for a bit.
Hi, it's Paul Tilstone from Festive Road. I specialise in the business travel space, and Booking.com has entered that space. And I'm a user of Booking.com for business travel. I like to see the sort of stuff that you do. But what I get sometimes when I've been to Barcelona is then a message a month later saying, hey, you want to go to Barcelona again? So I'm wondering how your test and learning is going in the business travel space, because it doesn't work that way.
Well, you know, if you're business travel, you could repeat yourself very often, right? I remember I had to go to Madrid one time every week. No, but you know, as I said, I'm sure that everything that's electronic marketing is not perfect, but there's a lot of tests out there. And I'll also be very modest on that. The fact that I'm sitting here on stage and know, if you're in a company like we do with autonomous teams testing all the time, A/B test, that I have the slightest hint on the detail what's going on there would be hugely exaggerated. So if you believe in autonomous teams, if you believe in 1,000 experiments at the same time running, me knowing the detail of all of those, hundreds of thousands we've done since we started, would be overestimating my capacity. I'm sure that didn't answer your question, but thank you for the question.
Peter, I want to test your diplomacy skills. You're the manager for the whole of Europe. We're thinking of opening an office here in Europe. Should we do it in Amsterdam or some other locations we should be looking at?
Well, Amsterdam, I mean, to be honest, it's for us, it's a fantastic, you know, sometimes people think, well, why is Booking.com, well, because we started here, right? That's where it started, and in a very small scale. The ability to attract people here from over the world is quite good. If you look at the most 5 tech cities, I think, in the world, I think Amsterdam ranks 5th on the world, which is really, for a small city like Amsterdam, huge, right? So Austin, I saw, was also a good choice. There were others. London was also there. But I think Amsterdam really has, it's easy for people to settle in. It's easy for people to find their way. The community speaking English is, I think, a big pro. And I think the housing hunt is getting a bit more complex. So access to housing is, of course, a big challenge. And we see that also for our teams. But the ability for us to attract people from all over the world is still very much there. So if you start a business, don't compete with us, but do come here.
Well, you can come to Rotterdam as well.
Oh, okay. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. One final question now for you, Peter. What I have, when looking at vacation rental, you have history coming from the hotel industry where there's always staff at the premises, there is revenue management, there's capabilities, cleaning is well organized. If you go to vacation rentals, you have individual homeowners, and actually you make the booking, and then the holiday starts a little bit later. How do you make sure and continue to make sure that the holiday is really excellent for the holiday maker, given the fact that the customer is so centric, how do you make sure that the holiday of your customers?
Yeah, so I think the booking window is quite long. Is that what you're referring to? So between the moment you book and to you stay, there's a long window, which we do see in leisure travel too. So for us, the leisure, I mean, to be honest, Q3 for us is really the biggest still. So the summer peak is really the summer peak. Yeah. So in leisure travel, you do see these long booking windows. I think it is important, especially if you want to stay engaged with your customers. How do you, during that whole period, stay credibly engaged with your customer? The customer may want to message the property, you can facilitate that. The customer may have requests for experiences, you can facilitate it. So keep that communication alive is something that we do with technology and marketing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Verhoeven, Rod Cuthbert, Thomas Erkens, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.